Hello and welcome to the first episode of Two Who's Review, the unofficial Doctor Who podcast. That's right, the unofficial. This is the first one of its kind. My name is Alex Cuff, and I'm joined by the second Who in this pile of Two Who's that we've got here.
Hi, I'm Nick Fitzpatrick Fuller, and we're going to review some Who.
We sure are, but not today. Episode 1 is very much not in the spirit of the title of the show. Because you might have clicked on this podcast just because you see something that looks kind of like that show you like, Doctor Who. I am assuming that for the most part we're just going to get people that we know watching this or listening to this, but there is every chance that we'll get some new listeners, or if we happen to take off like weeks or months from now and someone decides to jump back to the first episode, this is going to structure as kind of like an introduction to us. Who we are, what our Doctor Who preferences and history are, and the kind of things that you can expect from the rest of this show.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I am actually quite keen. Let's just say it's first episode jitters, shall we say?
Sure thing. Also, since we've got this this sort of downtime at the start of the first episode, I want to give a sweeping disclaimer for the entire series. If you're listening to this without having seen Doctor Who, there be spoilers ahead. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. Either accept it or go watch Doctor Who first. Kind of impossible because we're going to be discussing basically the entire almost 60-year run at the time of recording this.
Yeah, that's a lot of content, and if you got a lot of free time on your hands, fantastic.
Yeah, or
but if not,
what you could do is, because we're probably going to be taking this episode by episode, when you see an episode of this show has come out and you see what we're going to be discussing, you can go watch that specifically and then to come back for this so that you know the most of what we're going over.
Certainly.
But on the flip side of that,
I'm unfortunate.
Sorry, let me just get this out of the way because I want to make sure that
yes, of course, go ahead.
known up front. If you have seen the show before, look, there's a lot of it, and your preferences are going to be different than ours, inevitably. Purely because of the fact that both myself and Fitz at times have wildly different opinions of parts of the show. You will disagree with at least one of us at some point. And to that, I would like to say, good for you. Your opinions are your own, but likewise, our opinions are our own. Healthy civil discussions about the show are welcome in the comments of wherever we decide to post this. But please don't get aggressive. Please don't yell at us for thinking something that you don't. If you're surprised that why are these two people expressing their opinions and not mine, maybe take some time away from the internet to kind of refocus on your sensibilities.
Yes, Cuff and I both know there are definitely quite a variety of opinions you can have about this show.
Yeah.
From a lot of the discussions that we've had. And that, I think that's just part of the nature of this show because it's huge.
It's vast.
It's not like the longest running show. I mean, that would probably have to go to something like Coronation Street or something like that. Or
I think you might have hit the nail on the head.
No, have I?
Accidentally, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We don't have someone off to the side doing. We don't have someone off to the side doing our fact checking for us.
So, Doctor Who, long show, and it's pretty massive. Honestly, there's a lot of sort of wacky world building and crazy, nutty scientific concepts and character after character after character, including the main character with, of course, its innovative regeneration shtick. So there's definitely going to be differing opinions. You'll generally come, I think, across a broad consensus about some things in the show. But it's really impossible to get, a unified consensus on the whole thing. I mean, I think you're always going to have people who say, I don't know, Genesis of the Daleks, that's my favorite episode. And then you'll get other fans who will just, stick their finger up in the air and say, oh, well, that's where you're wrong because X, Y, and Z.
Actually, that episode is entirely overrated, and my favorite episode of the show is, in fact, Season 6's The God Complex. I mean, more power to you if that's the case, but like that's an odd favorite episode for you to have. But that's the thing about like because there are so many episodes, every episode is someone's favorite, as it is someone's
Yeah,
least favorite,
yeah,
and I think that's
and
part of
even
the beauty of the show in some ways.
yeah, and I think it's but yeah, because it is so long, even though there are kind of familiar structures and styles that you see, particularly I think even in the classic series, because it's a very sort of low to mid budget ABC, excuse me, BBC show. It can feel not repetitive, but like you know what it is, you know the style that's there. But even within that, it varies quite a bit. I remember watching a quite a good little mini documentary. I think it was called Surreal Serials, and it was, I'm pretty sure, part of the bonus disc of The Talons of Weng Chang. And it talked about how Doctor Who, yeah, it's sci-fi, but it's bringing in other influences, like things from Hammer horror movies, or I think I heard one guy who said that the Robots of Death, that's not pure sci-fi, that's Agatha Christie, like Murder on the Orient Express. So it's bringing in so many different strange styles into this one thing that you are inevitably going to have a lot of differing opinions.
Well, this actually gives us a fantastic segue. You started talking about the bonus disc of a classic series episode. Why don't you start off? Let's go over the history that we have personally with the show and why we're doing
sure.
What we're doing, why we've chosen Doctor Who as our specialist
Yeah.
subject for this podcast.
Yeah. So I discovered Doctor Who when I was about 7 or 8. They were playing reruns of the classic series on ABC, and my parents, who grew up with the show as kids, said, "Oh, Nick, you should probably check out this show. It looks kind of cool." And I think at first when I started watching it, I didn't like it. I found it kind of boring, and I actually found the theme song to be really creepy. I don't know, that's just 7, 8-year-old brain just getting freaked out by
it's
it.
like it's what is that strange musical instrument? It's a ghost.
But then everything changed when the Daleks came on scene. I don't want to backtrack with my personal history with all of fiction too much, but I love villains, always have. Loved them since I was a kid. Heroes, in a lot of series tend to generally bore me. I just love, what are the bad guys doing and stuff like that. So seeing these crazy, manic, rabidly authoritarian, truly evil beings just sort of rolling around on this set with this such a bizarre design. It was just, oh my god, this is really cool. And and then I was kind of hooked from that point, and I watched it with my family religiously. Really,
do you remember what the first episode that you saw was? Was it involving the Daleks, or was that like a little bit in?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think that I might have watched a bit of An Unearthly Child when it first came on, but I wasn't too interested at that point. It was only when I saw the Daleks that I'm like, wow, this is really great. And
also,
that's when the sort of
you really attempted to start from 1963.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, because when it first came on, I had no idea it existed, at all. It's just one of those sort of two trains passing in the night thing where it was the right thing at the right time, I guess. Because again, I literally have never heard of it before. My parents just said, "Oh yeah, this is really cool," and then because that was the only way to watch it, started bringing out. I don't think they had started bringing out at least Doctor Who DVDs into Australia at that point. Because of that, we just started watching it on the TV, and I just kind of fell in love with its wacky concepts, its thrilling bits of adventure, its scary scenes, and its melodrama and how over the top it was. Because it's 1960s low budget BBC show, and not all the acting is perfect, and the special effects look
non-existent,
sorely wanting a lot of places by comparison. But I loved it. To give you a sort of a picture, around this time I would also watch 1960s, the campy Batman on when it was on TV. But at that point, I thought the camp was not ironic. I used to think, oh well, it's just the '60s. That's just how they made TV back then. So that's sort of the frame of mind I was in with shows like that. But yeah, for whatever reason, I loved it. I loved the performances, like the characters, the worlds, um, the creature designs, because again, they're so. It's one of those things. I don't want to go on this particular subject for too long, but I'll just say this. One of the reasons why I like sort of low budget um, entertainment, and it's not just Doctor Who, it's other TV shows and other movies, is yes, a lot of the enjoyment in those sorts of in that sort of content is ironic because, you know, when I'm watching like a I don't know, like a Godzilla movie from the '70s, yes, I can see that it's clearly, you know, people in giant rubber monster suits beating the crap out of each other, falling into fake buildings. So there is obviously a level of irony there. There's something kind of fun, you know, it taps into my inner child, I guess. But um, beyond that, though, there's like this wonderful sort of middle ground where it's between a lack of resources and a lack of finance, but a desire between that and a desire to do something really good and qualitative and in many cases very innovative.
There's something
And
very
that middle ground that I love those sorts of things, and that's why I love Doctor Who.
there's something very amateur theater about that, isn't there?
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
like
similar because we both have a background in theater as well.
yeah,
We both
yeah.
um.
But
I should probably
yeah.
explain as well. We have been friends for over a decade now.
It's 14 years this year, actually.
Is it really?
14 years. Yeah.
Good
Well.
God. But yeah, we've I guess it's weird. We've both always had kind of similar interests because like we both did theater in high school. We both yeah we both very quickly were like, this is really the only thing that interests me about any of these high school subjects. Like, because we both started theater in year 9 as elective and saw it right through to the end of year 12.
Year 9.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until year 12 when we sort of connected on Doctor Who, because that was when I started watching it. I guess we'll move into this now as well. I'd always been a little familiar with the show. I knew it existed. I don't know what I thought of it before I started watching. I was always like, you know, not for me, because my pop culture tastes fluctuated rapidly throughout my from childhood to young adulthood, because I have 4 younger siblings, and as a result, all of the stuff that we tended to watch as a family was skewed to the younger end of the spectrum. Every family movie night, whenever we'd go to either Video Easy or Civic Video, whenever either of those two companies still existed, we'd always try and grab like a direct-to-DVD animated film off the shelf, as opposed to any of the very popular, slightly more adult media. So, for example, it was like years into adulthood before years. I'm going to take that sentence again. It was years into adulthood the first time I saw Lord of the Rings, or, you know, Indiana Jones, or any of the classic film franchises. And the same kind of went for TV. I always kind of stuck to the genres that I knew. So my sci-fi brain didn't really form until a bit later on. But I think it was because I had heard that the show was turning 50 that year, and there was going to be that was a big deal at the time. It was like, oh, the 50th anniversary is coming up. I think that's when I properly got into it. Before then, my sister borrowed my laptop to watch an episode or two, and I was in the room. So I think, weirdly, my first episode of the show was the second part of the first Cyberman 2-parter in the revived series with David Tennant. So it's the second episode of that story.
Age of Steel.
Yeah, Age of Steel. The second episode. I missed Rise of the Cybermen.
Yeah.
Age of Steel was my first. So I missed all of the context. It was very confusing. And then I think I watched like a bit of Blink around that time as well. But like, yeah, it wasn't until 2013 that I went back to 2005, started with Chris Eccleston, like binged the whole thing before the show Series 7 Part 2 aired, or whenever it was. and just fell
Hmm.
madly in love with it. I think because at the time I was sort of starting out as a writer as well, and I was like
Hmm.
I'd written a couple of short plays for outside of school drama stuff. But I think the magic of Doctor Who and why I keep coming back to it, like it can be so wildly different from week to week, yet it is still the same show. Like they've stumbled on a
Yeah.
very great creative
Yeah.
formula where it's like, they land somewhere completely different than when they were last week. They do a thing
Yeah.
and then they leave. And it's
Yeah.
often never discussed again. I just like the fact that they've stumbled into
Yeah.
this really strange creative formula that lets them be insanely, like, they can do something, they can do as much variety as they want, but it's all funneled into these with the same characters every week, and the same main characters at least. I think as a writer there was just something fascinating about that. And it's part of the reason why, like, no matter how bad the show gets, I don't think I'll ever stop watching it, because like week to week the show can be like, at opposite ends of the spectrum of quality.
Absolutely.
Case in point,
It,
the end of series 9, Heaven Sent is a masterpiece, Hell Bent is a
hmm.
travesty, and those are part of the same story. So, like, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
proof were needed right there.
I agree. I said for a while to myself at least that um Doctor Who is a show where I guess the best way to explain it is it's only as good as its last episode. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is that even if maybe an episode might be bad, maybe it could be terrible, but you just watch it again and it could be wonderful. It's such an episodic sort of like the episodes are self-contained. So it really that it's just a difference between one episode and another in terms of quality, and that's why you keep coming back to it.
Yeah,
Which is why people said, "Oh, it's been going on too long. Maybe they should call it quits." I'm like, no. I mean, as long as there's writers who want to write it, as long as there's fans who want to enjoy it, keep going ahead, man.
yeah, I agree.
That's that's just the nature of the show, and because of that, yes, in terms of quality control, particularly in the classic series, yeah, it can be a bit spotty. Yes, there's duds of episodes. Yeah, there are definitely episodes that are better than others, but because of the nature and the format, even it can afford to be as old as it is and still keep going.
Well, this is
And I mean,
probably a good
yeah,
this is probably a good time to discuss the differences between our tastes, because
yeah, yeah,
I've spent the majority of my time talking about how I started in 2005 and binged it all very quickly, and
mm,
you've spent the majority of your time
yeah,
talking about how you started from 1963, and like you've
mm,
been very hyper focused on describing the classic era, and I've been talking about the revived
yeah,
era. There's a very good
hmm,
reason for that.
yeah. So, yeah, so I prefer the classic series myself. I don't know, maybe some of it has got something to do with nostalgia goggles because I just really grew up on it. It was a huge staple of my childhood. And I would go through. I mean, I used to become, my parents would say obsessed with a whole bunch of different passions that I used to have, but Doctor Who was one that I would regularly return to again and again. Um, but there's just a quality to these classic series that I really gravitate to. I love again how melodramatic it is. I love how strange it is, how it's got this wonderful singular style. And again, to go back to my earlier point about, low budget, sort of scrappy underdog um stories and content. Um, yes, again, even when I was a kid, I enjoyed Doctor Who on a slightly ironic basis. I could tell a melodramatic, frankly, not great performance from the good ones, and I could see when the dialogue was getting a little hokey and weird. But again, between those, like between the lack of money, the lack of you know, sort of a lack of realistic performances, between that and the desire to do something really earnest and well thought out and even quite innovative, between those two spaces is where real innovation comes from, and
Mm.
that's why I love it. I mean, even something as simple as the Dalek design, I have no doubt that that design was largely done because again it's a low budget. It's literally uh, a wood machine that's supposedly made of metal that clearly looks like it's been made out of wood and plastic, with a guy sitting in it, rolling it around on a set of wheels. It's quite absurd the way the Daleks look, but it's so singular and so iconic. Like even if you don't know Doctor Who, when you see a Dalek, you're like, wow, that's quite an iconoclastic singular design. I kind of really dig it. So that sense of innovation and earnestness is what really gravitates me towards classic Doctor Who, seeing what they do with the limitations, but seeing the interesting places they take it. So the fact that, for example, it's like almost all of the planets that they go to, if they're meant to look barren, they are all filmed in the exact same quarry that was near the BBC. Everything from Skaro to the dark antimatter dimension that Omega was in, to God knows what else, but it's all in that same quarry. And I mean, yeah, you could argue it gets really frustrating, but I don't know, there's just something about it, man. There's that dedication that they're doing something strange and kind of wonderful and really caring.
On the flip side of that, I haven't seen all that much of Classic Who, and that's not because of that's not because I've got the opposite kind of lizard brain where I see something that doesn't look entirely realistic and go yuck. I think for me it's more the mild OCD that I have, where it's like if I'm gonna watch something, I'm gonna watch it, and I've got to catch up fully. And trying to do that with Classic Who, a show that not only is 26 years long, but also has huge snippets of the show unavailable for anyone to see at this point in time because of the missing episodes. That's always been just super daunting for me, so I haven't really gone through that yet. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen bits and pieces of it, and I have enjoyed what I've seen. I realized this the other day. I own, I think it's 8 or 9 classic Doctor Who DVDs. Every single one of which was a gift from you.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes,
now that I think on it.
Yeah, I've always been like in a weird space of like.
You're welcome.
No, I'm grateful. But I'm not. Oh, yucky! You don't know me at all. No. No, it's
no, it's cool.
It's more of a case of like, do I keep getting the individual stories, or do I go for they're now doing the individuals, the season Blu-ray sets? Do I get them instead? And also just a lack of space in my ever-expanding collection.
I mean,
Yeah, but shifting
trying to get it.
Yeah. Shifting to revived Doctor Who, that's where I thrive. That's my comfort zone. That's where I've seen every episode. Well, not every episode, multiple times. There are some that I've only seen once, but I'm very, very familiar with the revived series. I could probably name every episode in order from memory. Those are where my favorite performances and stuff like that. Like as much as I like the classic stuff that I've seen, I don't have as much of a connection to it. Because normally when I see classic series, it's always like, this episode or that episode or this here and there, and like I haven't seen enough of any individual character in Classic Who to really bond with them. Whereas like the revived Doctors are my Doctors basically. They're to me like, and also just because it's a more modern show, and that almost by definition. Like the majority of episodes are self-contained. You don't have to watch, sometimes 12 half-hour episodes to get the story. You can just sit down for 40 minutes. Maybe 180 minutes if you're lucky enough to get a two-parter. And you can enjoy a self-contained adventure, and I also quite enjoy how each series of modern Who has these, arcs surrounding them and stringing the episodes together in a really satisfying way sometimes. Not all the time, and we'll get to them when we get to them. But, those story arcs that are, like, the first series of the new series, the Time War arc with the Ninth Doctor, it's one of the best long-running story arcs in the show's history.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Actually, that
and
it was
you sometimes got
pretty spot on.
those arcs in classic series, the Key of Time and Trial of the Time Lord.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
again, I haven't seen those, but I really, I just love, how you can take a whole season of television and do self-contained stories for the most part, but still weave them together through a common thread.
Have those through lines. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I think
Um.
Revived Who has
Yeah.
thrived on. And it's something that's a modern approach to TV, which the classic series, for the most
And
part, doesn't have.
yeah, I love classic series, but I freely admit that that's having those self-contained, like that balance between the self-contained season, but with those through lines. I do actually think that Revival Who does it better than classic series, because even though you're right to point out things like Trial of a Time Lord, The Key to Time, things like this, they do work as kind of self-contained stories, but you always feel like when you get to the end of them, like there's clearly some sort of bigger puzzle that I'm not seeing here. And it's not the same thing as when you watch classic, because as you say, you can really just get through um a season with a really good self-contained feeling. But even again with stuff like Trial of the Time Lord and The Key to Time, you still feel like, oh, there's clearly more here. I've had to either, watch something previously or watch something afterwards. And that's even with seasons that actually have a long through line. Most of the stories in Doctor Who don't. I mean, there is some continuity from episode to episode with various ones, but a lot of them, like, you just get dropped into this TARDIS with this group of weirdos chucked on a planet without too much explanation, and that's kind of it. So, I think no, I think your comparison of the two is completely fair
Hmm.
in that sense.
But in terms of your connection with Revived Who, you obviously prefer classic Who.
Yeah.
Why is that? What is it about Revived Who that sometimes can put you off? Because I know it's a lot.
There's a lot to unpack here. I'll try to compress it as much as I can.
Please.
There are a few. What I wouldn't say it overall turns me off in any way, but there are, yes, some issues I have with it. So again, so I love the singular style of the classic series and how kind of wacky it is. Whereas the revival series, even in the Eccleston Tennant era, is a much more sort of conventional sort of show. It's quite cinematic, um, using directing techniques and even acting that you see, I think, in a lot of other forms of media. So that makes it slightly less appealing to me. But that isn't the biggest issue for me, because I actually think if you go back to the RTD days, I think we were
It's gonna
really,
sorry
really
this quickly. It's gonna get
but
super confusing when Russell T Davies takes over
yeah.
again.
Uh,
RTD1 and RTD2, R2D2.
yeah.
Christ.
Oh God. I am actually very excited for that, but anyway, that's a whole other topic. But yes, the
Yeah.
Russell T Davies era, I really think we were spoiled with how good those stories were. There obviously were a few darts, as with any series like that. There are going to be bad episodes, even episodes that are just kind of mediocre. But for the most part, they were really solid stories, and what they actually managed to do was they managed to take again the weird wacky qualities of the classic series that I really enjoyed and meld them quite successfully with more modern visual styles, which was really great. And then the writing was fantastic, great, really great tense plots. The Doctor was presented as this really good interesting character with really good effective story arcs. And even like some of the companions, like Donna, I think you've said is your favorite companion, and I can understand why. She's a great character. And even the way the villains are written, and just the whole thing, it really just combines um sort of some of the better qualities of the classic series, but with a whole new way of doing it. So even though again I prefer classic series just on a gut level to my most preferred revival parts, there's still Russell T Davies. He was still doing so much that just made the show really special. So that's the Russell T Davies era.
Here we go.
Um, then Stephen Moffat took it over.
It's time for
Now-
it's time for our weekly feature. Fitz bitches about Stephen Moffat.
Okay. See, I want to say that's putting it a bit strong, but like, it's not. Because I historically have had, how shall we put it,
Words.
a lot of concerns regarding Stephen Moffat and his era of Doctor Who. A lot of the creative choices he took, and the quality in his writing, and as a showrunner, how it kind of just sort of dipped, shall we say. Now, I'll say this: it's been quite a while since I've watched a good chunk of Moffat's writing, and I think honestly at this point, I'm a bit older than I used to be. I think I have a bit of a better perspective of his writing, or I think I might have at least. So if I watch Moffat episodes in the course of doing this, and I find that I actually really enjoy them, I honestly am not going to be that surprised. I guess that's just the nature of people and a show like Doctor Who, I guess. The point is, it could very well be that some Moffat episodes might wind up being my favorites. I don't know. However, there are a number of issues which, though they don't, aggravate me quite as much as they used to, they do still kind of get my goat a bit. Watching that era.
I suppose we'll come to explore those specifically when we end up getting to a Moffat era episode.
Yeah.
I suppose I'll just before we seem to be taking the revived series chronologically for a moment, so let me just catch up to where we're at before we continue. I agree.
Worries.
The Russell T Davies era is the first one, anyway. Good God. I don't think it's still
one of two.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think it's quite like dawned on me that he's coming back. Like,
same. I remember seeing the post on Facebook a while ago, and I'm like, "Has
this is
something happened?
This is
a
fake post.
Maybe I'm in an episode of Doctor Who. Maybe I'm in another dimension.
This
where
is either
things happen.
This is either an entirely new reality we've accidentally slipped into, or it's a late April Fool's prank that the entire internet is latched onto because they desperately want it so bad. I was like, this can't be real. This isn't happening. But no, his first four series are brilliant. I have a couple of Rose Tyler shaped problems with them, but
yes,
aside from that, because here's the thing: like the Russell T Davies era is undisputably the best era of revived Doctor Who, but even within it, it has my least favorite character of all time, Rose Tyler. So it's not like this. There's things you can, even in perfection, you can find blemishes.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, there are dud episodes in the RTD era as there are with any show. That's just the nature of television, I think.
On the flip side of it, coming into the Stephen Moffat era, I've always been this is really difficult because my opinion of the Moffat era, it's kind of like a bell curve kind of thing, where it's like it starts out great, dips in the middle, and then ends really great. Matt Smith's first series is really good. Peter Capaldi's last two series are really good. Everything in the middle is a mixed bag for me.
Yeah.
With that being said,
I think that's the consensus.
Basically, I think so, and I'm glad that's where we're at now. But also, like, even though I consider the Russell T Davies era better than the Moffat era, Peter Capaldi is my favorite Doctor by far.
Yeah. Which I think is completely fair. I think even though if I have problems with Stephen Moffat's writing, Capaldi's performance is genuinely one of the best in the entire show.
Well, I think
I'd happily say that.
I think aside from John Hurt, Peter Capaldi is the best actor to have ever taken on the role. Like he just has this incredible gift of, like, even if he hasn't been given a very good script, he has a talent for elevating the material to something that is just something special.
I might disagree slightly because, and again, this might just be my my classic series bias coming in. I do think there are quite a number of pretty good Doctor Who performances in the classic series, particularly from Tom Baker in particular moments. But you are right to point out that there's something about his performance that's a bit different, and that even when the scripts are, so, he can almost make them work. And again, I say this as a person who has quite a lot of issues with some of Moffat's writing, but he's just got that quality.
Yeah. I
That
will say as
kind
well,
of
like, I say
yeah.
he's the best actor to take on the role. Of course, like, I haven't seen all the performances in classic series.
Yes, of
Who,
course.
so like Tom Baker had the role for 7 years. He's gonna
Yeah.
he's gonna have some powerhouse performances in there. But like in terms of the revived series, he's far and away the best actor to play the role. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I can understand
So,
that.
and this brings us to the current era of the show, the Chibnall era. Now, this is going to be interesting
mhm,
because
mhm.
I haven't spoken to you about Chibnall era Who in a long time. I don't think we've had a discussion
I
about
think
Doctor Who to this extent since we were doing a show 2 years ago, and we were like,
Oh, by the way, no, do you want to hear something disturbing?
Yeah,
It wasn't 2 years ago, it was 3 years ago.
3. Is that right? That can't be right.
The last episode I think we recorded was in January 2019.
Oh, well, in terms of episodes of the previous show that we did, sure, but I'm more referring to just talking about it in general.
Pardon me, yeah.
And we were doing a show.
Oh, yeah.
We were doing a theatre show about 2 weeks before the country entered lockdown the first time.
Oh, of course.
And
yes,
that was when series 12 was airing, so we might have had a couple of conversations about it then. I'm curious to hear what you think about the Chibnall era now that it's almost over.
Yeah. And I think I had a bit of a lengthy Facebook Messenger about what I thought of the Revolution of the Daleks episode. Anyway, so I'm glad you brought this up, Cuff. I really am, because over the last couple of years since Chibnall took over, I've had a lot of time to think. And look, I don't want to say that my mind's been too swayed by the critics, but I've, watching stuff on YouTube, I've been able to sort of think about other people's opinions, sort of reflect them on my own. And when I mean opinions, by the way, I don't mean from crazy nutjobs who think, oh my god, there's a woman in my Doctor Who. Oh, harumph. No, I mean actually.
As a blanket statement, we can both agree that those people are insane.
Yeah. But actual, good YouTubers like there's a guy called Davis. There's a channel called The Closer Look. And JXI, who made this mass 5-hour video called The Fall of Doctor Who.
We watched the same video.
I only watched a bit of it, but anyway, but that's what I'm talking about in terms of opinion. So, I have had a lot of time to rethink, and I do quite enjoy the Chibnall era, and there are a lot of problems I had with the Moffat era that are gone. But frankly, there are a lot of problems I find now, particularly with the dialogue, that have just sort of crept in.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think I might have been viewing it with some rose-tinted glasses. And again, it might change, if we go on and do more of these and I watch some of the Chibnall episodes. I suspect my opinion of them might change, because I think that there are quite a few problems with it. Now, having said that, there are still elements of it that I quite enjoy. The stories themselves are pretty fun, like the plots on a basic level. I love Jodie Whittaker's performance, and I'm also just going to put another disclaimer here. When Jodie Whittaker was announced, you perhaps remember, Cuff, I was one of these curmudgeon blockheads who was getting all cranky about having a woman play the Doctor, as disturbing as that is to admit.
I was the same.
Partly because I want to say it wasn't like a sexist thing. It was more like, I just hope they don't make this tokenistic, something that, which I think is a concern.
No, we had the exact same issues. When Jodie was announced, I was skeptical about the show's ability to give her a character that wasn't the woman Doctor. I was really worried that was going to be her only defining character trait, as it was with Missy for a little bit before they made her good. But then I think at the time, so they announced Jodie. In the interim between her announcement and her first appearance, I actually watched all of Broadchurch.
Same, actually.
Yeah, and that got me incredibly hyped up for her first series. Not only
Yep,
because
absolutely.
not only because she was a fantastic actor in it, but it was all written by Chris Chibnall, and it was all written
Yep,
incredibly well. So I think,
yep.
yeah, we both went into the first series of Chibnall Who being like, I don't know what people are talking about. This is really good.
I was cautiously optimistic at the
Yeah,
beginning because I'd seen Broadchurch, which is Whitaker and Chibnall, and I could see, oh, there's clearly, there's a lot of quality here. He
yeah,
can handle a story arc and make it quite compelling. And Jodie Whittaker's performance in Broadchurch is great. I mean, she's great in Doctor Who as well, but
yeah,
Broadchurch is quite phenomenal. So that
yeah.
really
But
instilled confidence.
but I will say that like I have kind of I've soured on the Chibnall era since. I think that the most recent series rather, Flux, it was my least favorite series while I was watching it, but it's probably the best series he's written. I think it's just that a lot of the problems I've become much more aware of the problems in his era, before, like in that period before Flux
Yeah,
started. So I think if I
yeah,
went back and
same. It's
rewatched,
exactly the same with me.
I think if I went back and rewatched series 11 and 12, I really disliked a lot of it. As I didn't
Yeah.
really like Flux all that much, but a lot of Flux
Mhm.
was better than it had been. I think that the
Mhm.
Chibnall era is the worst that overall, at least, it's the worst that Revived Who has been. It really pains me to say it, but I think that Jodie's Doctor is my least favorite Doctor, and her performance is good, but they have never once given her any really good material to work with. They haven't given her the opportunity to let her character be anything more than the quirky traveler.
Mhm.
And for me, there's so much more to the character that I think is missing.
Yeah. Cuff, I'm glad you said it, honestly, because I've been feeling almost exactly the same for a while now. Again, it's because when Chibnall started, I was so happy. I was so happy that we weren't going to have any of the, or it looked as if we weren't going to have any sort of frustrating, needless twist or any really painfully memey dialogue, I suppose you would say, like we had in Moffat's era. And again, because I was so soured because of what Moffat's writing had kind of done to the show, particularly in his later years. I was just so happy that we weren't going to have that. And there were a lot of qualities to it that made me feel like almost like I was watching Classic Who again. It's like, oh, great, we're back with, fun sci-fi adventures, running around with friends, defeating the monsters. And even, there's moments in like The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which I quite uh in but having taken a break, having reevaluated it, again, I think there are quite a lot of flaws. Again, most of it has to do with dialogue, and I'll probably get into more detail with that later on if we watch more Chibnall episodes. But
Yeah, I think
you,
we could probably even I would even expand that to just the writing in general. I don't think that the writing is that
yeah, oh
strong
yeah,
in the Chibnall
yeah,
era. I think that a
yeah,
lot of stories have huge problems in them, either
mm,
in terms of narrative or theme. And we'll get
mm.
into the mess that is the Timeless Child reveal at a later date, but because I don't want
Yeah,
to
that's
spend too
a
much, I don't want to spend too much time on the Timeless Child right now. I feel like
no, it's so
we
that's a whole other thing.
yeah, I don't think we can properly unpack the Timeless Child outside of its own. Like when we actually watch that episode, I feel like it's the only time we can really
Yeah,
do that conversation justice.
yeah, I agree because
Um,
there's a lot.
there's so much.
Um,
As of the recording of this podcast, we have 2 episodes left of Chibnall Who. We've got Legend of the Sea Devils, which is coming out soon, and then the Centenary special later this year, in which
mm,
Jodie will
yeah,
regenerate. Um,
yeah.
interestingly, the Sea Devils are coming back. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll just backtrack slightly.
Oh
So
yeah, sure. Sorry.
I haven't watched. Yeah, it's all right. I haven't watched Flux yet. I actually only finished the first episode today. Again, there's a lot of things I have to say about it,
Yeah.
but I did catch the little teaser of the Sea Devils, and I have to say I find it really interesting. The design they've gone with because that is such
Yeah.
a classic era design. If you compare it to the new design of the Silurians, for example,
Yeah,
where
it's really
it's night and
close.
day,
Yeah.
which is so bizarre.
I think
But
it's a
I kind of
really
love it.
it's a I on the surface, it's a really weird thing to do in your second last episode as
Mm,
showrunner, but I think it makes a lot of sense
yeah.
because Chris Chibnall wrote the two-part episode that brought back the Silurians in the first place. And
Mm,
in my opinion, that's his best written episode or story, the two-part Silurian episode in Matt Smith's first season. I think that is his best piece of writing for the
mm.
show. Um, so he clearly understands the Silurians. Um, I'm hoping that he understands the Sea Devils because Chris Chibnall is kind of like half and half on whether or not he really gets a recurring monster. He
Yeah.
he doesn't really get the he sometimes gets the Daleks right. He's sometimes got the Cybermen right. He almost got the Sontarans right. Um, he really nailed the Weeping Angels, and I'm excited for you to watch that episode of Flux.
Yeah, I'll have to, definitely take a look at that,
Yeah,
see how it handles it, because they do introduce them in that first episode.
yeah,
I have, again, issues of how those scenes are structured, but again, that's a separate topic.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I just thought having the classic design for the Sea Devils, it just appealed to the, no pun intended, but the reptile part of my brain. It's like, haha, it's that scary monster I used to watch when I was a kid. That's great. But again, I find it's just curious to me because again, the Silurians, because they looked really wacky in the classic
Yeah.
series, especially in the third Doctor episode, Doctor Who, and the Silurians, they look so bizarre that it would be difficult to get sort of human performances out of them in a modern context. So I
Yeah.
have no doubt that's why they were streamlined. They look more human. But with the Sea Devils, they've stuck with the cartoonish
They've basically
vibe,
it's almost
which
like when you compare like the designs of the original Sea Devils and the new ones, it's like there's no change. Like I felt the most they've done is like
yeah,
iron the costumes and then that's it. Like they've
yeah.
it's going to be so interesting
I
to
mean,
see how they
basically,
it's going to be so interesting to see how they look in motion in the episode because at the moment I just
yeah,
like it just looks so classic series that I can't really.
yeah. It was a bit, and especially because the way Chibnall's Air in particular is directed,
Yeah.
because in terms of the camera angles they're using and the editing, it looks kind of out of place. Like I could even accept that design even in Russell T Davies' era, because even though it's a lot more modern than the classic series, it's still kind of holding on to the campy quality a little bit. So I could
Yeah.
almost accept that Sea Devil's design with RTD quite easily, but now it just kind of, I feel discombobulated, I guess is a way you could phrase it. It's quite strange.
It
Just
is.
so I'm excited and I like the design because again, I love even just how bold they are. That just saying, okay, we're definitely going back with the wacky '70s design. But I'm more curious than anything to
Yeah.
see what they do with that because that could look really
Yeah,
strange.
so the Sea Devils episode is at some point in presumably in the first half of the year, and then we have the centenary special, which is the episode being
Hmm.
made to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the BBC.
Yeah, the BBC.
I
Yeah.
think they said that's going to be either an hour long or cinematic length, which is interesting, and it's going to feature
Yeah.
Jodie's regeneration into the 14th
Hmm.
Doctor, whoever that is. We haven't had that announced yet. Um, I think
Yeah.
I think we're in such a weird spot with the show where it's like the centenary special is going to happen. We're going to get a new Doctor, but then the next episode after that is the 60th anniversary special, and it's so weird to have the anniversary special also double as the first episode of a new Doctor.
Yeah, that is kind of odd, honestly. And I'd because Russell T Davies, he is doing the 60th anniversary special, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, he's doing the 60th anniversary
Yes.
special, which will lead into season 14.
It's- Yeah. So I'll be very curious to see what he does with that. But you're right in like having it be a beginning episode of a season is going to be quite strange because they normally leave it because obviously it's in November. They might leave it to maybe the end of a series or in the
Yeah,
middle maybe. But having it be the new thing. I'm actually quite curious and kind of excited to see what he does with that because that's a new challenge. But I
yeah,
think if there was a Doctor Who showrunner who could do it, it's Russell T Davies. I think he might have some really cool surprises in store. I would love to see a multi-Doctor story
yes.
for the 60th anniversary. I would love to
I feel
see
like that's
Russell.
almost inevitable, right? Like if they have an
Yeah,
anniversary special that isn't multi-Doctor, it's gonna be it's gonna feel wrong. But I think it's gonna be super interesting to have a
Yeah.
multi-Doctor story that is also the first episode of a new Doctor. Because like
Yeah.
normally
That's
multi-Doctor stories
yeah.
work because
How are they getting
yeah,
it?
the reason multi-Doctor stories work is you've got these very similar yet different versions of the same character like bouncing off each other, and their differences and similarities are so well defined by that point that it's
Mm.
very it's fun watching them bounce off each other. But like presumably this is going to
Yeah.
happen not only with a character that we haven't gotten to know that well yet, but it's the first episode, which is classically the post
Yeah.
regeneration crazies episode where the Doctor is still trying to
Yeah.
find
Absolutely.
themselves. Like, that actually
And
could
not
be
to
really
mention.
cool though, right? Because like you've got this character who's still trying to figure
Yeah.
out like who they are and like which elements of their personality are going to be more pronounced in this version, and you've got these other doctors coming in trying maybe molding that decision. Like, ooh, I like this aspect of this Doctor, I'm
Mm.
going to take that. I like this aspect of this Doctor, I'm going to take that. That could be really interesting.
Yeah. And I think there are, I think, a lot of challenges there. As you say, having this Doctor who's not going to have their personality defined because it's the first episode is one. Then the post regeneration nuttiness, that's going to be another issue. But because the character won't be defined, you could have a bit of a too many talking heads scenario.
Oh
Because
yeah,
in order to make that banter work, make the repartee and even the just the pure collaboration of all these doctors work, you need to understand their personalities. That is one of the many pleasures of anniversary stories. It's one of the reasons why the Three Doctors is one of my favorite stories, because just the banter between the three of them, but in particular John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton is just so fun. Now, having said that, and I just thought of an idea, they could make it work if they do the following. So with the 10th anniversary special and the 20th anniversary special, they have one Doctor who is not in the episode a lot. In the 20th anniversary special, Tom Baker is in a flashback sequence from an episode that never got aired, and he's not in the anniversary special at all apart from that point. And then with the 10th anniversary special, you had William Hartnell is trapped in this little time bubble because I think he was in pretty poor health
he was ill
at the time. So I wonder, could you do something where where the new Doctor, it's almost like a Doctor Light story, but the new Doctor is the only Doctor we don't see a lot of, and maybe could this new Doctor, all the characters and even the audience are wondering, oh, who are they? Who are they? What are they going to do? Are they going to do something fantastic? And then, similarly to the Christmas Invasion, this new Doctor comes in and saves all the other Doctors when they can't figure out how to, sort through the issue.
That could be interesting.
That could theoretically work.
Something's gone wrong with the regeneration. The Doctor's poorly, but because there's an invasion happening and something bad's happening and time's breaking apart.
Yeah.
So we've got these other Doctors coming in to help sort that out while the new Doctor is. That could be interesting.
That it could theoretically work because it is kind of. I mean, it is a bit of a compromise, but I suspect that's probably the better way to handle it. Because even though the introduction won't be as big and as ceremonious as other Doctor introductions are, it will still be really memorable because they're going to be the ones who are coming in and saving the day.
Yeah.
Not to mention that because most regeneration episodes have the Doctor who, post regeneration nuttiness, there isn't heaps and heaps of room for character development anyway, I suspect. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting no matter what they do. I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm very keen to see what Russell T Davies does with it. I just want to track back for a second here, just to the Chibnall era.
Yeah.
Again, I'm glad you're saying all this because I've been feeling like this for a while.
Oh, okay.
Even with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, love her performance. Her performance is fantastic, and my God, even that first episode was just such a sort of hammer blow to my, as I say, block-headed curmudgeoniness that it was great seeing her do that. But it just most of the episodes, I'm just watching it. I'm like, God, I want more here. It's like it's almost on the cusp of something really good and interesting, but it never quite gets there. So
yeah.
Definitely, I think with the writing, it's lacking with her character, which is unfortunate because again, similarly with how I felt with Capaldi, great performance, not great material.
Yeah.
There are some moments which I really do enjoy, particularly when she gets more serious.
Yeah.
I particularly enjoy, for example, the ending of the haunting of Via Diodati.
Yes, you're correct. That is the
Um,
only good 13th Doctor
yeah.
moment.
when she's giving that great speech about why
Team
you don't
structure.
meddle with the timeline. That was really good. That was good writing. Her performance was fantastic. And really, that's a classic, Doctor Who dilemma.
Yeah, and it's one of the
You know,
few
thinking,
times. It's one of the few times we've actually seen some kind of darkness with that character as well. Where
yeah,
like
absolutely.
where she's talking about like do you want to make that call? You want to make that call? Then take the call because like you tell you what, I treat us like a family, but like I'm right at the top and you guys are down here sometimes. This is how it's going to be. If you don't like that, you can go, but this is how it is.
I love that. That is a classic Doctor Who moment. Even in something like, unfortunately, the video of this story doesn't exist anymore. I've only been able to listen to it through audio. But in the Evil of the Daleks, they're in the it's a second Doctor story. They're all trapped in on Skaro in a Dalek prison, and the Doctor literally says, "I wouldn't sacrifice, the world, even if they basically ransomed all of the lives in this room." Now that's pretty grim, but it makes sense because the Doctor always kind of has to be thinking ahead and thinking about the greater good. And there are plenty of other moments too. Like there's an episode in the classic series, The Pyramids of Mars, where I think Sarah Jane says something to the fourth Doctor. She's like, "Oh, sometimes you're not," and the Doctor says, "Human? Well, I'm not human, Sarah. I walk in eternity," is the phrase he uses.
Yeah.
And that alien quality, I think, is a core part of the Doctor. And I think it's really important that if you are going to go with a sort of more whimsical side of the Doctor in the writing and even in the performances, you've got to have that understanding and that core sort of world or universe weary alienness to the character. And that moment in the haunting of Diodati was a really great moment for doing that. And unfortunately, and I hate to have to say it, but it's one of the few moments that Whittaker's been able to really do something like that.
No, I completely agree with that. Haunting of Villa Diodati is either my favorite or second favorite episode of Chibnall Who. I haven't like it's between that or the Weeping Angels episode from Series 13. They're both written by the same writer, which is not surprising. I'll have to rewatch both to figure it out, but it's one of the two. And Haunting is like one of the only episodes that really gets the Doctor right. And I hope to God that Whittaker is allowed to play the character again in Big Finish stories, so that she has another chance to get some really good material under her belt. We've been recording for a while, so let's do a really quick rapid fire.
Yeah, sure.
So first up, favorite Doctor?
Tom Baker.
Yep,
yeah.
And for me, it's Peter Capaldi. Favorite companion?
I think the last time we tried to do this, I said the Brigadier. I'm going to say now Ace, but the Brigadier comes in at a very, very close second. So
cool. Yeah. And for me, it's Donna Noble.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to be cynical and go least favorite Doctor and companion?
Sure. Yeah, you know what? Why not?
Yeah, like for me, it's Jodie, just because I haven't seen enough of the classic series Doctors to signal out someone who I don't like more. But like purely for the writing perspective, it's Jodie for me.
You know where this is going. It's Matt Smith.
Yep.
I won't try not to go into too much detail at the moment, but frankly, I just can't stand his performance. And I also have a lot of problems with Moffat's writing, so it's kind of the perfect storm. Yeah. So yeah, that was just a lot of it. It just hurts me to watch a lot of that performance. Least favorite companion. Oh, well, there's a lot of companions because it's. I don't know.
Rose Tyler. I've already said it. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not something I have to think about at all.
And fair enough. I don't know, man.
It's okay if you don't have one.
Yeah, I might have to think on that one because I want to go with sort of the cliched classic fan answer of Adric, but I don't mind Adric. I love the conflict between him and the Doctor in Earthshock. That's just great and frankly quite beautiful. So I don't think I have like a standout companion that really just irks me.
Sure. Favorite individual story?
Yeah, probably Genesis of the Daleks.
Ah, you normie.
Yeah, mate. I mean, I think I used to enjoy Resurrection of the Daleks more, but that's because that was the first Doctor Who DVD I owned, and you have to understand, just being at that age, being obsessed with Doctor Who, I watched that episode to the point that I think within like 3, 6 months, I could have quoted the whole thing back to front. But for me, in terms of both, again, that pure, just sort of gut level joy, and also sort of looking back with the more qualities of the script, I think it's probably going to be Genesis for me.
Cool.
Yeah, so
for
I'm going to
me,
stick with that.
For me, it's Heaven Sent. Peter Capaldi's
Mhm.
1 hour tour de force.
Mhm.
And I think that episode is proof that like a lot of other actors would have struggled at doing a whole hour of television acting across from themselves for 99% of it, and Capaldi thrives on it. And that episode,
I agree.
It
I
works.
agree.
It works in the context of where it is in its own series, and it gets even better when you start picking up on some themes, not just with its own series, but with the show as a whole. Heaven Sent is beautiful to me. Do you have a least favorite episode?
Well, again, I think last time we tried to do this, I said The Power of Three, but I'm not even sure if I watched that whole episode. I think I just got really pissed off when I saw the weird little, they're running around the clothesline like a bunch of, I don't know, and I'm like, what the hell am I watching? But in terms of, actually, no, I can't believe I'm forgetting this. Yes, I do have a least favorite episode of the ones I've seen. Totally, it's Twice Upon a Time.
I was waiting for that. Yeah, I was like, why didn't you go there first?
That hurt. That episode physically hurts me. For a number of reasons, all to do with the writing. Kind of representing for me the worst elements in Moffat's writing. And it just, oh god. I mean, you know, Cuff, I'm sure I ranted to you about this enough, but that was so frustrating.
Yeah,
watching that episode.
Yeah, I've heard you speak about this a lot. For me,
Yeah.
it's probably the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People in series 6.
Yeah, I remember you saying you really hated that episode.
I really dislike that story. And like I know it's a really weird one to focus in on, and I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. But like there is so many little things with the writing in that story that I'm like, you and again, it's been a while since I've seen it, so yeah. I can't really. They're not at the forefront of my mind right now. I just know that whenever I think about that story, a little part of me dies inside.
Yeah.
So
it's clearly made an impression. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's awful. And again,
like a death by 1,000 cuts.
Basically, yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. And by the very laws of time, we'll eventually get around to discussing that one, which I'm not really looking forward to, but whatever. I think we don't need to go over much more in this rapid fire, do we? Those are the basics.
I think that's yeah.
Hopefully by now you have a bit of a clearer picture on our personal tastes with the show. Yes. How we differ, how we're the same. We ended up being really unified on Chibnall Who, which surprised me.
Yeah, that surprised me too, because my impression was that you liked a lot of what this era was doing.
Well, I think
I just thought
it's just been a while since we were talking about it, because I think we probably soured on it at around the same time. It's just that at that time was COVID happening, so we couldn't. There was more important. There were more important things to be talking about. No way
to discuss it. Yeah,
but this has been the first episode of Two Who's Review. If you've been enjoying, keep tuning in. We're going to be a little more hyper focused in the future. We're going to do individual story discussions per episode, really delving deep into that specific story and what works about it, what doesn't work about it. Its position in the show as a whole, the philosophies around it, the history of it, really, really deep dive stuff, as we've already said. And, hopefully we've hooked you enough with this that you enjoy our takes and our conversations enough that you're keen for more.
Yes, I definitely hope those listening at home enjoyed. Hope our band was fun enough, and I hope that our insights were insightful.
And I
Yeah, that
especially,
makes
I
sense.
especially hope that I've been able to do a good enough job in the editing room to drown out a lot of the background noise that's been going on a lot. We're both recording these in our own houses. We're not in lockdown at the moment, but we might as well be.
I definitely may as well
Well,
be for
yeah,
a number of reasons, but
yeah, we won't get into that.
anyway,
Basically, we're not able to be recording these in person with each other for a long time now, presumably.
yeah,
This is the best we can do. Hopefully, I hate to say it, but this might have been like a litmus test for what and how not to record a podcast in the future. We
yeah.
might have,
We'll see how it
we
goes.
might have happened upon a better way of doing this for next time.
I had my dog come in about a third of the way to recording this. I really hope if she didn't make any noise, like she didn't bark or anything, thank
I
goodness. But like,
genuinely think I
yeah,
genuinely missed that. I didn't notice at all.
okay, good. Because I have the door open this whole time. I've
Oh,
realized. So my mum,
okay.
she's because my mum, she's doing a lot of video conferences at the moment. My
Right.
dad's working with Centrelink at home, so God, I hope none of that picked up. I don't think it did, but
I
anyway.
didn't hear anything.
Okay, cool.
But
But yeah,
this has been
thanks for tuning in,
this has been the
folks.
longest sign off in history. Yeah, tune in next time. We haven't discussed what episode it's going to be, but you'll see it in the title of the episode when it comes out. Join us next time for more Doctor Who discussions. I've been Alex Cuff,
I've been Nick Fitzpatrick Fuller.
and you'll hear from us next time.
See you later on Two Who's Review.
Goodbye.